Good morning. Patricia here in my fiber studio, going to demonstrate some things on the circular sock machine this morning. We're going to work on a half pitch rib, which is going to make up this knee sock. I made these for my husband. He gets really cold, and so we're working on some nice long wool socks. And you'll notice that the top of the sock is very stretchy. Um, and what I've done is a half pitch rib. So I'm going to demonstrate a half pitch rib. And this particular rib, because we don't need the entire diameter, I'm using a 72 needle cylinder and I'm doing half of the river stitches, which on a true knit, it has 72 river slots. Some ribbers only have half the needles. So you could still do this half pitch on uh, another antique machine that has half the needles. Typically, they have half the needles as the cylinder. So I'm going to use half of my rubber needles, which is 36. It's going to give me a little more diameter in the calf. You see, I dropped a couple of stitches. Um, those are easily fixed after you take it off the machine. And to me, it's just easier to fix them at the other side of the project than trying to fish down between the rubber and the cylinder. But you'll see what I'm talking about as we go because it's a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to switch cameras now, and then I'm going to start this project and demonstrate half pitch ribbing on the circular saw machine. And hopefully you can make some knee socks today. Okay, back in a minute. Alrighty, so I'm here at my knitting machine, my circular sock machine. And what I have done already is I've used a cast on bonnet, done a bunch of waste yarn here, and I have my weight on the bottom, my full weight. Now I'm going to start knitting my first row of project yarn. This is my project yarn. It's going to match the other sock. And we're knitting on 72 cylinder needle. And when I put the ribber on, I'm going to put on half of the needles. Okay. But so we're going to knit around, and I leave the heel spring off. I'm not using the heel spring. Just going to knit around. I got one needle here that's going to drop if I don't get that waist yarn in there. So let's fix that. Nope, split it. I'm using some old acrylic for my waist yarn that came with one of the machines that I bought, and whew, it is really something hairy and splits super easy. Okay, so let me get my cone underneath my yarn feeder here. It's complaining. I'm going to stop at the front of the cylinder, which I'm going to call C, and I'm going to put my ribber in, and then I'm going to start. Okay, especially when I'm doing half pitch rib, before I put this ribber in, I make sure that this screw on the top of my machine is screwed in tightly, and I see that I have a wee little bit of space there. I'm going to get my um, Allen wrench here and make sure that that's tight, because what I find is um, yeah, that because the half pitch kind of rattles the machine a little bit, it tends to loosen the screw. You want to make sure that the rubber dial is seated correctly all the way down on the bottom. You're going to rotate the dial around to the fin until you hear it click. And it doesn't really click into place, but you can hear it hit the fin. And you're going to rotate the tappet plate around until the nut is against the stopper. Now my machine is already set up for half pitch because I've done the previous sock, but you want to notice that this slot is lined up with this fin. Again, if I were doing every needle, this slot, this fin, this slot, this fin. I'm going to use the long the long slots. I realized that in the older machines, they're not differentiated that way. Maybe yours are all the same size. Maybe you only have 36 on your 72 river. Gonna pull that needle out a little bit, and I want to just catch that project yarn. Oh, now that's not the right needle. I need to move over one slot because I'm going to pick up every other on my river. Excuse me. Okay, we're off to the races here. So I'm picking up, going fishing for that project yarn between my river dial and the cylinder, and I want it to be in every other needle. So I'm doing the long slots, and we're just going to continue, excuse me, all the way around the dial. Get a drink. I hope you're having a good morning this morning. It's early here. I'm actually doing this before I start work for the day. Um, it's still dark out. It's in Michigan. I'm in Michigan. There we go. Okay. Pulling that needle out so I can fish for that yarn. And I want to just be careful to only grab the project yarn, not split that waste yarn, because what happens when you split it is that it kind of tangles up your needle and then they don't knit off. You end up with a drop stitch. Excuse me. So as I'm loading these river needles, I want you to notice that the latch is left open and that the actual yarn is going to sit in the hook of that needle. And that is going to allow that river stitch to knit and knit off nicely. Okay, so I'm going to continue around the cylinder, adding in. There will come a point here where I'm going to crank around a little bit because I'm going to get to where I can't access them. So I'm going to stop the camera for a minute and I will be back when I get all the way. Okay, so I've started my cylinder going around as I'm advancing, putting in the needles. And I forgot to mention, you also want to make sure that your river is set to in position. And I use tension on the knee socks that's kind of right in the middle of that, of my options. I found if I try and do it tighter, then it just pulls the yarn too tight and I end up breaking the yarn because uh, it's just, and it occurs to me, and this may be something to try in the future. Maybe I'll have to experiment a little more with this, but I find it a little challenging, especially the cast on row, and I haven't had good luck doing any kind of a salvage on the machine while I'm doing the knee sock. It tends to just not work out. So what I've been doing is when I take the knee sock off the machine, I leave the waste yarn around the top and at the toe, as we Kitchener the toe. But at the top of the sock, I've been finishing off with running a yarn, this piece of yarn through the loops, and I can adjust the tension of the top. I considered doing a salvage on just the cylinder, but then that kind of defeats the purpose of having the extra diameter. You want that diameter at the top. You don't want it to be binding at the very top of your sock. So I chose to do a hand. I do the salvage by hand. But I think what I could try is actually dialing the tension of both of these, well, of the cylinder stitches much looser at the beginning than and then tightening it up as I go, because I think what happens is you just don't have enough yarn between, this is just the yarn between the stitches. Um, you don't have enough yarn to pull it up and make a whole nother stitch. So yeah, there's plenty of room for experimentation. If any of you come up with a improved method, please share it with us so that we can all get better at this fine craft. Okay, so I am my last stitch here around the cylinder with my needles, and hopefully I didn't miss any, but you can see that it started to knit the river needles as we go here. And I take this first row kind of slow, and if I see a stitch dropping, I pick it up. And I did have one here that did not knit, so we're going to pick that up. I'm not sure why it didn't knit. The latch was open, but we're going to put it on there. Okay, let's see how we're doing. So first couple of rounds, I'm double checking to make sure that every river needle actually knitted. Yeah, I see another one here that did not knit. You want to catch those early on. Not sure why. Like I said, there's always room for, always can learn something new, can't we? Always. Oh, that one either, right next to it. So not sure why, but we're gonna put those on there again, and we'll see what happens the second time around. Watching those needles, making sure they knit through and don't drop. Sometimes I reach underneath and I don't necessarily put more tension on, but I help those stitches advance and fall between that cylinder and the river dial. It looks to me that everything is, oh, here's part of the problem. Maybe it's hooked on my yarn feeder. I think. Yep, I think we're good. So I'm still not going to go to the races here. I'm going to still go a little bit cautiously until I have some of that knitted. Oops, forgot to start my row counter. I think I'm on about row 3 or 4. If you have a magnetic row counter, I keep a magnet on my weights underneath here. Keep a magnet, and then I trip the counter with the magnet if I forget the first couple of rows, which, as you may imagine, happens. Okay, I think we're good. So I'm going to pick up the speed. After you get the first few rows on, it feeds pretty well. But again, now I'm seeing here that there's a cylinder needle that did not knit off. Happens too. You know, I think there's just a lot of moving parts. So we're going to help that one knit off. I'm going to make sure that it pulls down a bit. And the other thing I didn't mention is that when you do cast on with a cast on bonnet and you're going to do half pitch rib, you want to make sure that that cast on bonnet is on your machine evenly. So if you had a space where it didn't pick up a lot of stitches, and so your tension on your work is going to be uneven, you want to fix that, because I think that's probably what's happening over here. I can feel underneath where there was a hole in the cast on yarn, and I think probably that's means that the weight is not distributed evenly around the work, so it's not going to slide down into that space. So I'm not really pulling underneath it. I'm just taking my thumb after I pass by that area and advancing that down between the cylinder and the river. And now we're good. So we're going to go, I'm going to keep filming here for a few more rounds, but then I'm going to disconnect and we'll be back when I get to 130 rows. No, 230 rows. Sometimes I do a full rubber dial and cylinder, but as I mentioned, I didn't need that much increased diameter, but when I made them for myself, here, I'll take a second to show you. When I made them for myself, I did a full half pitch rib. So every cylinder needle and every uh, rubber dial needle, which gave me 144 stitches. And that's what the stock is. Because these are for me, and my leg has a bigger diameter than my husband's. So this one is less than that, like 36 stitches less than that. Okay, so it looks like I'm got things going pretty well here. I'm gonna pause the video and we'll be back when I've knitted 230 rows. Okay, so I'm at 149 rows, and I want to remind you or suggest to you, don't forget to move your weights up. If you find that like I'm sure that I dropped a couple stitches here because my weight had hit the floor and I wasn't aware of it. So pay attention, gotta move that weight up, keep the weight on your machine, and don't sweat it. If you drop one stitch and it doesn't rib for a couple of rows, you can easily pick that up after you take it off the machine. So don't get too worried about that. Uh, it will start knitting in again. You know, just make sure. I know that I missed maybe 4 or 5 rows here. I can feel it. Sometimes if I can actually see the drop stitch, I'll stick a bobby pin on it. Yep, and I can see it right here. Stick a bobby pin on it, and it won't continue to unravel. There we go. So we're good. All right, so now I'm going to continue. I'm at 162. I'm going to continue to 230 rows, and then I will be back. Okay, I'm at 230 rows, and I stopped knitting at the C position. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer the stitches that are on the ribber to the next neighbor, the neighbor needle on the cylinder. So you're just going to pull that. I slide the rubber needle out, but I don't go past the latch, the end of the latch, which allows me to use the end of the rubber needle as my hook to transfer the stitch. So it's one quick little motion. This is what I have found worked the best for me. Some people do it a little differently, but I'm sure that you have a way that works for you. But this is the way I'm doing it. I'm going to transfer these rubber needles to the cylinder needles, and then I'm going to remove my rubber. Now, there may be some surprises, and when I take this off, I may find another stitch that is dropped. Again, I'm just going to slide a bobby pin on it, and then I will fix that when I graft the toe shut and do the salvage because as I mentioned, I am doing the salvage after I take it off the machine. I do it by hand. I just find that to be easier. Now I've come to that place where the rubber dial is kind of in the way, so I'm just going to advance that rubber dial a little bit so I can access some more needles and continue until all the rubber needles are off and transferred to. Now, as you experiment with half pitch rib, like I mentioned on the other pair that I made, I used all 144 stitches for the top part of the sock. Then when I got closer to the ankle, I took one needle off. So I did this, I decreased my number of ribber stitches by 36. So then that was every other. You're going to find a formula that works for your anatomy, and it'll be glorious. You'll have some nice, warm, long, comfortable socks. Just so soft and comfortable after you wash them. Just a pleasure to wear. These would make a great gift if you have grown kids or other family members, parents who get chilly. All right, so we're going to advance again. I'm going to go over to the B position, and I should be able to complete these ribber stitches. I have learned, been hosting some crank-ins here in Michigan, let's see, what do we call ourselves? The Michigan Machine Knit Connection. You can find us on Facebook if you would like to join us. I do occasionally put up patterns and PDFs free within the group for you to use and enjoy. I think in January I might be offering a ribber class. There have been a lot of people that have come to the knitting day when we have a crank in. We've had 2 of them so far. It's been so much fun. It's been so well received. Thank you to all of you that have come and that we've gotten acquainted. It's been really fabulous. So I think in January I'm going to offer maybe a class on Facebook. Okay, got that. Yeah, so this knitted nicely. I think that, like I said, I have 1 drop stitch down there, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Okay. I was mentioning, I think in January I'm going to offer a class, maybe on Facebook Live, but then we are going to meet again in February and chatting with one of the other gals that has been coming. I'm thinking we might be doing a river class. So if you're in Michigan and want to make a day of it, we have a great venue that we are able to use. Much appreciation to St. Paul's Methodist Church in Lawton. And okay, I'm going to reset my counter before I get too distracted here. We're going to do, now we've done 1 row here plain, and this is my second one. So I'm going to put 2 rows on my counter. 1, 2. Throw my magnet back on my stack of weights. Remind myself to move my weight up because, yeah, see, so can you see this? Perhaps if I bring it up here, there is 1 little spot right here. I can't get in the camera. I'll come over here. 1 little spot that didn't knit. Got a few rows right there. Just take a crochet hook or a latch hook tool and just thread it up through there and then secure it off with a piece of yarn. Not a hard fix at all. So 1 stitch, not bad. Happy with that. Okay, move my weights up and put them back on. I've reset my counter. It's on the 2nd row here, and we're gonna do 2 rows, or excuse me, 10 rows pre-heel. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're going to stop at C, position C, and we're going to set up to do the heel. Now, I got another little trick to show you. Let me see if I can lay my hand on it. I learned this in another group. Annette Essen, if you've seen her wonderful book on hats, uses one of these, I don't know what they're called, badge holders? Is that what they are? Badge holders to pull up their needles, and to me it's so much faster than pulling them up with my loom pick. All right, there we go. We're set up for the heel, and I got my weights here, which I think I'm just going to go ahead and put on my heel weights, and you're going to want to engage that heel spring now so that you can go back and forth. Engage your heel spring. And we're going to do the heel. Now, I don't do a deep heel. Some people add some needles on the sides. I find I don't really need that, but I do a pre-heel to put a little bit of space between the ribbing and the part that's in your shoe. So I did 10 rows of pre-heel, and now we're going to just crank our regular short row heel. And I do the Creelman heel. So when I increase, I'm going to do it a little differently than when when I'm decreasing one needle on each side. And when I increase, I'm going to do one down, two down, one up, which I will demonstrate. So, get those where they will do the best good. Now we're good to go. I don't go down real narrow on my heels because both my husband and I have very wide feet. So I actually only go down to 12, but you may want to go down smaller than that. The rule of thumb is that you use a third of the needles. You go down 1/3 on each side and a third in the middle. But this is how I do it. You can do what works for you. It's the beauty of it. You don't have to do what I do. This is just a guide, not the end all, right? Now, when you put that heel spring on, it does tighten up your stitch a bit. Which is not a problem when the rubber dial is not on there trying to pick up an extra. Okay, so I'm down to 12 needles. I'm going to raise the carriage side, put 2 down on the opposite. Raise and 2 down. Raise 1, 2 down. Raise 1 needle, 2 down. Gonna move my weights. If you see those stitches riding up on your uh, needles, be proactive. Like push them down and then put some downward pressure there because you don't want to drop stitches. It is so annoying. Okay, 1 down or 2 down, 1 up. 1 up on the carriage side, 2 down. 1 up on the carriage side, 2 down opposite. The reason I like this heel is because it doesn't have the holes on the increases and decreases. There's usually just maybe one large vent hole, which I pick up when I'm grafting the toe, I pick it up and tighten it. On the heel, it's not so much, it's not a problem. But I find this method makes for a very nice looking heel and toe. I use the same process for the toe. Finish doing my heel here, and then I'm going to pause the video and crank the foot of my sock, which for me, this sock is going to be 70 rows. Rule of thumb is that your heel and your toe each take about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, so you can kind of figure that into the length of your foot. 1 up, 2 down. You're going to go past the halfway point, which is really not a problem because you really don't want to end in the exact same place that you started. That's why you get holes. Okay, I'm going to stop it. See, I've got all my needles back down into work, and I'm going to gently push these down. And you want to feel and look and double check. And even when I double, triple check, I sometimes drop a stitch on the back side. All right. So now all my needles, the latches are open. Going to continue around. Make sure that they're all knitting properly. Reset my row counter. I've gone once around. I'm going to trip my row counter 1 row. I'm going to pause the video and crank 70 rows. Okay, I've cranked 70 rows. I'm going to put my heel spring back on. And I'm going to pick up the needles to do the toe. I do them both on the same side. Some people do one in the back and one in the front. I prefer to graft my toe on the top of the foot. Okay, I'm going to move my weights up and complete the toe of this stuff. All right, I'm going to complete that stitch, lift up 1 needle on every row at the beginning of the row, self-wrapping, so it wraps itself around that lifted needle. That's why we do it that way. If you didn't, if you lifted it over here, you'd have to manually stop and wrap it, or if you knitted it that way, it would have a little hole there, which we want to avoid. So, remove that. Now, some people are better at judging where to put the weights. I end up moving them a couple times, but it doesn't bother me. Really no big deal. I like to keep that downward pressure so that I don't drop stitches, especially on those corners. Because when you have wrapped stitches on the ends of these, of your heel and your toe, boy, it's hard to get those picked up if you drop them. It's hard to see where they were added in. So I just am proactive and mess with my weights. And again, I'm going to go down to 12 stitches. Okay, we're down to 12 stitches. Move my weights up. I'm going to lift on the carriage side. I'm going to put 2 down on the other side. Lift 1, down with 2. Making sure those latches stay open. If you push them down too far, they tend to pop the latches shut. Or the other thing I found is static will get going sometimes and they want to close. So make sure those latches stay open when you push those needles down. You can, I do, in fact, hold them down with my fingers sometimes until it gets closer. And then that yarn feeder actually helps hold them open. 1 up, 2 down, 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 all the way across to my edge. You gotta go till that stitch completes. Again, I've gone 1 past. That's okay. So I'm gonna lift that back up and put those 2 down and make sure as I'm putting down these needles that those latches stay open. I'm gonna crank until that needle, the last needle on that side, until that latch closes. When that latch closes, I'm going to leave a good length of project yarn. I'm going to put it in the middle of my sock and add on my waste yarn and crank it off the machine. So I do a few rows with the waste yarn, not a lot. I just don't feel like I need it. Oops, that would be a mess. I hooked it on my river needle container. That would have been nasty to pick up. And again, I'm watching as I'm going advancing. I don't want to drop a stitch at this point. It's not the end of the world if you do, but especially on these corners. And see these 2 needles right here, the latches were closed. You just want to take this row slower and make sure that you're not dropping needles. Once you go around 1 time, typically, oh, look at there, that sneaky little booger. All right, not a problem, but even being careful, I dropped one right there. So I'm going to go down, grab that one, and pick those up. Past the latch, over the latch. Past the latch, over the latch. And open that needle latch up. Okay, this should be good. Alrighty, I'm gonna do 5 or 6. And then when I get over here, I'm gonna break off that waste yarn. Oops, it looks like I bumped my camera on there. Sorry. And there we go. Before I take these heel weights off before I crank it off the machine because, oh baby, it hurts when those hit your toe. And take this weight off. Now I hold that toe and put a little downward pressure and crank it off. There we go. Okay, so we got the foot of the sock. We've got a nice long knee sock and successfully knitted half pitch rib. I accidentally knocked my bobby pin out here, but I caught that stitch. Let's see, I've got a little area here that did not knit. It dropped a stitch. I'm trying to find the end so I can show you, but it's inside the waist yarn. So, little spot right there. Just latch that up, tie that yarn off. It won't show. It won't be a hole. It'll be just fine. So one little spot to mend on the leg of the knee sock. I'd say that was okay. I cut I don't use ravel cord. I find that it's doesn't unravel as nicely as when I cut. I cut 3 stitches. The little bars, just cut 3 of those, and then pull the middle one. You pull the middle one, it usually comes off pretty good. Pull that out, and then take it off your uh, bonnet. Off to the races. Gonna sew up the selvage with a pick up those loops at the top on a needle and graft the toe together, and we'll have a beautiful pair of really warm, really delightful knee socks. Happy knitting today. I'll catch you next time.